Hello everyone. So in this video I'm going to go over the literature review assignment detail so we can better understand that assignment, because the assignment that you actually have due is the planner that's going to help you prepare to ultimately write this paper. So in the paper itself you're going to have 5 to 7 pages in total. You're going to have a minimum of 2 college level research sources, and those absolutely could and it probably should be the sources that you found already and did your source evaluations on. Unless you want to change one because after looking at it and evaluating it some for crap, you realize that maybe it's not a great source to include in a paper. APA formatted, so with the title page, page numbers, headers, and in-text citations, and a reference page. And in this particular assignment, you're going to explain the topic, the scope of research that you found. You'll include research questions you came up with to guide your search. You'll explain 2 sources you found while looking for answers to your research questions. You'll summarize each and then explain the strengths and weaknesses of each, so like mini evaluation. And there will also be a section of the paper where you reflect on the topic. What did you learn? What's left to find? Would you make any changes? Finally, your conclusion is going to send home that persuasive message that you could do a lot with this research topic, and it's important and significant for people to understand where you're coming from and why you're informing the reader about this information. So those are the basic areas that are going to be covered in the literature review paper, and in order to make sure that you hit those, the planner is going to be helpful. So this literature planner worksheet, you're actually going to answer all the questions as a quiz so that it goes internally in Blackboard, and I can give you feedback on Blackboard to each specific question. But I would recommend that if you see here, there's the Word document literature review planner is a Word copy of it, and I'm going to recommend that you go ahead and also fill this out. So you could fill it out on your computer, you could download it. If you fill it out on your computer, you can just cut and paste your answers into the quiz. This is just, we prefer in this class we're going to do as many things formatted as quizzes as possible. So you're going to submit the questions as we do in this format. This is how you'll actually submit to D2L. And it'll ask you the questions, probably used to. In this format. Where you say things like background and importance of topics, scope of the literature, research question, and these will be the same research questions. If you need to tweak them based on any feedback you've gotten or any more thoughts that you've had, that's totally fine. Yes, these are the same questions, but keep in mind that if you didn't get as high of like all the points, or if you noticed that as you researched one of them wasn't helpful, this is the time to replace and improve. And then you'll explain the relevance of your research question. So these are following this planner pretty exactly, but I think it might be helpful for you to also maybe fill out this planner, have a hard copy, maybe print this out and write it as a draft so that you have a written record of it, because this is going to help you figure out how to break down your ultimate paper. So in the introduction, I'm going to go over each of the sections of this literature review planner. It asks for the background and importance of the topic. So it's asking you, what do you think about the significance of the topic? Why is it an important topic? And any like quick background that we might need to know. This question has confused lots of people, the scope of the literature. What we're looking for with this question is what is out there. This would be a great time to talk about, there's tons of information. I found multiple sources. If you happen to notice as you were searching through the database, I found tons of information, but it was all centered in Kuwait. Or I found tons of information, but it seemed to be more in the past. Or I found tons of information overall. There were tons of websites, new current websites talking about this issue. I didn't find as many academic sources interested in this particular topic. Whatever you found in terms of all of the information out there, if you were struggling to find one or two articles, the scope of the literature is not that broad. You could say, honestly, there's not a lot of literature about this topic. Or you could say, most of the literature of this topic comes directly from the government. What you're looking for with the scope of the literature is a description of the types of sources available to you. Whether they're a ton, where they might come from, what they might have a focus on. It's an explanation of all of the different things that you encountered in terms of articles as you were searching through. So that process of like, what is out there? Not necessarily just what you chose because you only picked two that were really good, but as you were searching for those two, what did you notice? Is there a ton of information about this topic or not very much? Is there lots of academic information? Is there lots of current information on the internet? What did you learn about the literature? By the literature, we mean the articles and the sources that already exist on this topic. The objective of the paper is going to be your thesis. So you're going to answer this question, what topic do you wish to research and why? You're going to answer that question and that'll be your thesis statement. Your research questions that you've been working on go here, 1, 2, 3. And again, if you need to tweak them, tweak them. And a reflection means ask sort of, why are you asking this question? Was this a good question? What do you hope that this question leads you to? So the reflection is a little bit about like, I asked this question because I didn't know very much about my topic, or I asked this basic question because I think it's important to define the term or the topic I'm looking into for a wide audience who may not be aware that it exists. Why did you choose these questions? That's what the reflection should be. And you can see it's just like 1 or 2 sentences. The next section of your paper, and so you see how there's research questions section and a research review section here. And then if you go down further, there's going to be a reflection and a conclusion. These are the sections that will these are the headings that you will include in your paper. So your paper will be broken down in the same way. For instance, in research review, you're going to have a paragraph looking at your first source and a paragraph looking at your second source. And remember I told you guys that where it says main idea, what we're looking for here is a summary. So it can be a couple sentences. A basic summary starting with one of those great summary sentences where you identify the rhetorical information like author, publication year, title, journal article, if applicable. You include that information in the beginning of the sentence, and then you finish that first summary sentence with the overall main idea of the whole article. And then you can add 1 or 2 more sentences, if you like, to sort of explain the major points. What is going on in this article? What's the major overarching idea in this article? What are some of the major supporting points? Here, for relevance and significance, this is where you can explain how this source is relevant to what you want to talk about. You can explain why this source is significant. Is it because it shows that actually the thing you are looking into has many negative impacts? Is it important because it definitively shows that there is something important going on? What is the relevance and significance of this article to your research? And you can also answer in terms of, this is a really significant article because it answers several of my research questions, including giving a basic definition of the topic I want to go over. In the evaluation, to be fair and unbiased, try to come up with at least one strength and one weakness of the article. Look at the article and really evaluate some of the strengths and the weaknesses based on the CRAP criteria. Is it current? Is it relevant? Does it have authority? Does it have accuracy? What's the purpose? Really evaluate for those strengths and weaknesses. And a piece of advice I can give you guys generally, having looked at some of your sources, is do you really need to think about sources that come from companies? Because I notice lots of websites having informative articles, but do we need to keep an eye on them when they come from companies? That would be a great thing to evaluate and talk about in this section. For source 2, it's going to be another paragraph when you ultimately write your paper. Exact same questions. And the reflection. Tell me a little bit about what you now know about the topic. You might want to start this sentence with something like, I learned, to avoid the trap of just repeating everything that's already come. You really want to think about actively the things that you learned and summarize those instead of just cutting and pasting the general main ideas of the articles you read. I now know that this topic is incredibly popular in this particular part of the United States. Like, what do you now know about the topic that you didn't know before? What patterns or themes do your sources reveal? So what patterns are you noticing? What themes do you see coming up over and over again? So if you're looking into something like green construction, if you keep reading about materials, sustainable materials, that might be a pattern or theme you want to mention. What gaps were found in the research and or during the research process? Was there anything that you didn't know? Was there anything new that you're like, why can't I find this particular piece of information? What more can you seek out to better understand the process? How will you adjust your research methods and focus? This one is a great question for moving forward. So you might want to say, well, now that I've looked into this, I know I need to narrow down the broader idea into something specific. So again, if you're doing something like green construction, you might want to narrow it down to just like sustainable materials. How can you adjust your focus? What are some new questions you might need to ask? What are some new things you might need to define? And in the conclusion, you're going to explain the overall implications of the research and the significance of research findings, which sounds super fancy. But in terms of the actual information you want to include in here, the overall implications of the research, think about in terms of implications for you going forward with the topic. So this conclusion you can explain if you feel as though your topic needs to be narrowed to be feasible, if you think that there are some limitations to your topic. What you're explaining with the implications of the research is not what the research is saying so much as what doing the research taught you about the topic. So this might be a great place to say, like, okay, it's going to be hard for me to find sources, so I'm going to really need to search and maybe broaden my key terms, but I do think that this is a feasible topic. And I think it's important, that's the significance, because I think everyone needs to know about cloud-based accountancy if they're going to be a CPA. This is where you want to include, for your conclusion, sort of what you learned in the process of researching and why that matters. And this will be sort of where you offer an explanation of if you think it's feasible to move forward with this topic, or if you seriously need to overhaul it. This is the place where you conclude and you say, like, based on my ability to find a couple good sources, I think that this topic is researchable, and I think that I can find some really good academic sources, although I am going to have to rely on the internet for more current sources to help me talk about this topic, which does have an impact on people in the future. Things like that. You're concluding with the implications of the research and the significance. And then down here, for the references, this is going to be, you have all of this information listed here. This is going to be the same information that you will see for the references that are included in the PowerPoint that you looked at that was attached to the announcement. So that covered the APA reference sources, and I'm also going to explain a couple sites that you could potentially use to help you out in creating these references, as well as a quick breakdown guide of these types of sources that you might want to use. So you're going to have a reference for source 1 and a reference for source 2. So these are the actual APA references that come at the end of the paper. So that's a basic breakdown. I'm also going to include, so make sure that you look through all of the materials, I'm going to include a guide, a sample of me doing this for my imaginary topic, so you can see sort of what it would look like. All right, good luck.